I hope we will kickstart soon. Media, you guys, also we give you a minute. Honorable members, chairman, and commissioners of the Independent Electoral Commission, distinguished stakeholders, and thematic experts. My name is Dawda. I am a program and communications associate at DK Partners and the MSDG Project Joint Committee for the Elections Bill. We welcome you to the one-day retreat for National Assembly members focused on technical and consultative discussions on diaspora voting and representation. GK Partners is the initiator, co-founder, and implementing agency of the Migration and Sustainable Development in the Gambia project. MSDG is a pioneering diaspora-led technical cooperation program implemented in partnership with the Office of the President and co-financed by the government of Switzerland. We are the creator of the event, Professor Nabane. Professor Nabane is an accomplished young legal scholar and human rights practitioner who is applied to the Gambia and a leading light within the Gambian diaspora of agents, and is jointly appointed as the research professor of law. She has written a number of academic papers and books, including on human rights in the Gambia. She graduated with Bachelor's of Law, LLB, from the University of the Gambia in 2012. She graduated Master's of Law, LLM, and earned a doctorate in laws from the University of Pretoria in South Africa, from where she also held a postdoctoral fellowship. She is also a research affiliate at the University of Bergen Center on Law and Social Transformation in Norway. She founded the Gambia Law Hub as a platform and a repository from where people can access. She was one of the first MSDG Diaspora Fellows appointed by GK Partners in 2020 to support the work of the Law Hub. This was partly what inspired GK Partners to work with the Office of the Clerk of the National Assembly to initiate and finance the setting up of the online National Assembly TV. Before I hand over to Professor Dr. Nabane, may I kindly ask that we take a moment to reflect and offer silent prayers for gracious guidance and productive proceedings. I now hand over to Professor Nabane.
Thank you, Claire, for that introduction. I didn't expect. Colin, very much thank you again. And thank you to the GK Partners, Professor Fal, but also the fantastic team behind the scenes as well for the incredible work that they diaspora, but also providing the needed technical support for the work that we continue to do in the Gambia. Good morning, everybody. Welcome again to the Stakeholder Retreat of National Assembly members on Diaspora Voting and Representation. I will like to recognize the Honorable Minister of Justice, Honorable National Assembly members, representatives of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, as well as all the ministries, members of the Independent Electoral Commission, members of the Interparty Committee, as well as other relevant networks of the diaspora and civil society, the President of the Gambia Bar Association, experts, diaspora experts also in the room, scholars that I also look up to. Welcome and thank you for being here. I know it's a Saturday, so we appreciate you being here as well. We wouldn't take a lot of time, especially for this part of the program. And there is no high table, so technically, as you can see, this retreat is meant to be, as Claire mentioned, really focused on dialogue, especially as it relates to the election bill. This retreat comes on the background of that, especially as we go into the consideration of the elections bill. So really providing this unique space for engagement, to address queries, to address questions, especially as it relates to the practicalities of diaspora voting. I think it is settled matter that we're not really talking about whether the diaspora has a right to vote or not. What this retreat really is meant to be is really focused on the practicalities, what is needed to actually ensure that we are able to do this as well. And so, just briefly looking at the main aims of this stakeholder consultation, as I said, one is really to provide an opportunity, and again, we thank the Honorable National Assembly members for being here, for you to be able to ask questions, to be able to hear evidence as it relates to diaspora voting, but also as it relates, as I said, to the practicality, especially which is the Diaspora Representation Bill, but also to create a national consensus as well, especially as we get into the parliamentary debates and the process around this as well. As it relates to the format of the retreat today, so we'll have this as well as the keynote statement by the Honorable Minister. We'll also try to see if we have a little bit of time for the media as well to engage in that Q&A, followed by a group photo. But when we come back, especially for the rest of the day, as we said, this is really meant to be an interactive session, and that's why we have this sitting, so nobody's on the stage. So we're all at the same level in terms of engagement, and especially around some of these issues as well. At this point, I will like to call on Professor Jibril Fal, OBE, who's the Program Director of the MSDG project and GK Partners, to give us a little bit, especially around context and scene setting as we go into the deliberations today. Thank you again for being here. Prof.
Thank you very much, Professor Nabane, and thank you all for being here this morning. Thank you to the Ministry of Justice and the Honorable Minister. I did have a PowerPoint presentation, but given the delay in starting, I think I'll do a summarized version of what I prepared. As Professor Nabane said, we are now, and you know it better than us, we're now at the stage where the focus is on the practicalities of making diaspora voting and representation a reality. The question of it being a right is a settled matter. In fact, we live with the situation of 27 years of it since the Constitution of 1997. So 27 years, and 7 years since the end of dictatorship that really has not happened. So we kindly invite honorable members, as we've engaged with you, that the focus of the discussions be on the practicalities and how to make it happen in the fastest possible time scale. Most of the provisions, if not all, that are needed for this are already in the elections bill that is already before you. So what we kindly ask you is that those provisions remain untouched. It has already gone through the joint committee, and the joint committee found that it was, as provided, it is appropriate, and they made no recommendation to change anything. So that is the main thing we ask you. We also ask you to do something special in that to 175,000 people. So that's taking a big chunk of some of the regions of the Gambia and saying, for whatever reason, you shall not vote. And that, the outrage of it is beyond contemplation. The reason I think we're able to live with it is perhaps because these people are not in your face every day. They from. But their contribution to the households and the communities are in our faces every day. So we kindly ask you to say, time is now. The injustice has been going on for too long. We want on this element and the other elements for 58 of the good men and women in the National Assembly to turn up on the appointed day and vote positively to give the 8th region of the Gambia its well overdue constitutional, democratic, and political rights. Not a single abstention and no thinking of voting against. This is what we humbly and kindly ask you. The work is not entirely just for the National Assembly, because there is a part that the Ministry of Justice needs to do and bring it to the National Assembly. Regarding diaspora voting, that's in the election day, the Independent Electoral Commission is here. We do not doubt taking the point on diaspora voting, voter registration and voting, but the reality is it hasn't happened. So we also do not want to spend time. It's about the correction from now on. We summarize, you've seen in the program, that there are 4 things really that needs to be done. Number 1 is, yes, these provisions regarding diaspora representation and voting that is in the election bill. The second is the demarcation of diaspora constituencies for them to be represented. And for that, that's on the plate of the IEC. And at some point when they do that, the way our current constitution is that you then have to amend section 88, which sets out a specific number, it says 53. And your colleagues have drafted such an amendment bill before in 2021. It was the Foreign Affairs Committee that did it, and now that bill is in the hands of the Ministry of Justice, who would look at it and see what it will do. We are pleased that the Minister of Justice is here, and we would hear from him. But if and when, and we think it would be when rather than if, he presents this view, again, we are begging you that all 58 of you would turn up and vote positively for the change. Linked to the amendment of section 88 is that another section needs to be amended, because now there is a ban that says if a Gambian has a nationality of another country, that is, they have 2 or more nationalities, they are not allowed to sit at the National Assembly. And this needs to be lifted, because section 39 already gives us a right to. With the other hand, is not consistent with the delivery of the rights. And to take away this ban, I just want to remind you that your children who live abroad, who acquire a second nationality, they haven't lost anything. They've merely gained. An additional nationality is a plus. It is not a minus. It's only for members of the diaspora who have given up their Gambian citizenship. That's an issue. And that's an academic point, because they are no longer Gambians legally. Culturally and all of the Gambians. So that's what it is. So there shouldn't be any controversy or issue on this matter. People have also asked and raised the point, and maybe decided things, some of you members have raised it with us, and maybe this is what we'll discuss in the afternoon, about the cost. They said diaspora voting will be expensive. And although you don't say it specifically, but it's as if they're saying that if it's expensive, it shouldn't happen. I'm hoping that's not the thinking, but I have the feeling that that's the thinking, that it's very expensive, so it shouldn't happen. Well, I want to remind you, maybe it's not needed, but since we don't have the right now, so it's worth reminding ourselves, that the right is so powerful that cost should not be a factor. In this very country we live, there are unfortunate compatriots of ours who from the day they are born till they die, 70 years later, they would contribute not a putut to the treasury of this country because they are afflicted by poverty. Would anyone ever contemplate financial contribution? We wouldn't even begin to think about it. That illustrates the point that it's not necessarily about the money. But even if you said it was about money, the costs involved are not as high as you may think. You're talking of $5 million, $6 million, $7 million at the top. That's what it costs. And when you do that, that's not a lot of money for the diaspora who contribute over $700 million in this country every year. If you believe the Central Bank of the Gambia, that would be over 50% of the GDP of this country. If you believe the World Bank, it's over 30% of the GDP of this country. So however you cut it, this is a constituency who proportionately contribute far more than any group of citizens of a development party. And this is the same group who come from families, villages and towns across the country, that as a country, we've decided not to give their constitutional rights. That is the goal. So money shouldn't be an issue. Sometimes people say, oh, the technicalities, the logistics. I'm pleased to tell you that at least our project, we've been engaged in working with the IPC since 2017. Among the many technical roundtables we've had and discussed, and on their own, the trips they've taken, logistics have been worked out. We have a 22-page document that the IPC would work together. This was in preparation before the last round of elections on the logistics. To give you a summary of the Gambian diaspora population, we know which countries they are in and with how many. And where did we get the data from? We start from what the United Nations says, the data. Then we use other sources that are better than the United Nations data to do the correction. So it is public, it's online, we'll share it. It's been published for years now. So based on that, we think the voting is realistic to happen in 15 countries. They're listed. Each of those 15 countries, which cities, they're listed. Those cities, how many polling stations you need, they're listed. All the logistics. Then you can do the border calculation. And this was done on the basis of using marble and ballot box. So I know there is talk in this election bill of paper, but the right to vote has no direct bearing on the style of voting. Because as we vote now, that methodology, the logistics for the diaspora to vote using the beautiful marbles and the ballot boxes is not only feasible, the calculations have been done. Yes, it may be slightly more difficult and clumsy, but why? What is that a matter to the right of 175,000 Gambians who are entitled to vote? Then sometimes people say, oh, what about then we may have different ways of methodologies. Still, the general rules is guided by the law. Whatever the law says, the existing electoral laws, if it says this is how you vote, this is how we vote. But I want to conclude by reminding ourselves of what we are. Before 1960, in this our own country, first-class citizens. The first-class citizens were entitled to register, get a voter's card, and vote. And to be a first-class citizen, you have to live from Banjul all the way to Berkama in the colony. If you lived in the protectorate, you had no right to vote. universal enfranchisement came in 1960. Reflect on that a moment. And now we are here, 2024. And our country, we have chosen to create a class of second-class citizens. 175,000, because we are beyond Birkama, we are beyond Soma, we are beyond Bangsan, we are beyond Fatoto, we are beyond Koina. We don't have rights, or at least our right has been denied. That is what needs to end. So, you will have questions. You will have practical issues that concern you. Our point to you, our request, our begging to you is those are nowhere near enough. Way hinder this. So your concerns, we're asking you that this session, let's discuss it. Let's find the experts are in this room, from Ministry of Justice to IEC, to the very people who were part of the government, and the Supreme Court confirmed the right, and other experts are here. Let's have that discussion here. And even after that, if in your heart you have a little bit of doubt still and say, this is really not perfect, I say still go with us, because that is not enough. We are never happy with everything perfectly. It's about the preponderance of the matter, and the preponderance of the matter speaks for itself. You know, in those bad days of this enfranchisement, we moved after that, and the vote was universalized. Then another practical operational issue turned up, which I raised because sometimes people are thinking, colleagues here at the National Assembly are thinking, that if they choose to keep the ballot, the marble, maybe they may consider them doing paper voting for the diaspora. And some I've heard said, oh, but you cannot have two voting systems. Well, 101 law tells you that, you know, there's the question of what is a crime. My brother, one of my brothers, who you may know, an eminent lawyer, refers to this story often, that the question is asked, what is a crime? Often people, especially students, would go into the philosophical discourse of the sociology of what is a crime. But in essence, a crime is whatever the law says is a crime. So if you legislators go to Parliament tomorrow and you pass a law on it, and that if you so do, you have committed a crime for which you will be sentenced to prison for 5 years, then if we come back here on Wednesday and I hold this microphone, I may end up in jail. It is as simple as that. So whatever the law says, that is the law. So if the law says that we will have a marble voting in Gambia, and in the diaspora it's a paper ballot, and you will say that's the law, that's the law. In those, when the enfranchisement was expanded, a nice little problem turned up in the 60s. In that to have a voter's card, it had to have your picture. In the colony, that wasn't a difficulty. In the rural area, that became a major issue for everybody to have a picture. And the law allowed for the cards to be issued without a picture. But think about it. Many of those official documents we had, and remember, this was the tobacco oppressed us. They still allowed us to thumbprint because we couldn't write. So the fact that something is a difficulty, we are reminding you, there is no cause to then go and take the rights that are bestowed upon the people, just for the sake of practicality and feasibility. It's a pleasure and honor to be here, and we are ever so grateful for the continuing engagement. Many of you, we meet all the time. We consider our project, we consider the National Assembly a good friend. And the MSDG project, Mr. Pamsa Sidibe, whenever he escorts me at the National Assembly, he's treated as a member of staff. Everybody knows him, he's always there. It's because it's important. All these things we are talking about in the National Assembly for the health. And for the constitutional amendment, it depends on a government constituted by about 25 people, the cabinet, president of cabinet. And we're pleased that the Honorable Minister of Justice, who is the governmental law officer, is with us here after many years of engagement on this matter. Professor Nabana, I hand back to you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Pao, for the context and the scene setting, especially throwing us back to the historical context and how there are really parallels as to what we see here today as well, but also really especially giving us an overview that will lead us, I guess, to the second part of this retreat after this session on the specificities and engaging in those issues as well. I would also like to acknowledge the presence of the Vice Chair of the Independent Electoral Commission, the IEC, Mr. Joseph Collin. Thank you for being here with us as well as others that have recently joined us. We will now move into very brief stakeholder statements. I am looking at the National Assembly members. I do know that you have a lot to say in relation to this important retreat as well. Just to give brief statements before we invite the Honorable Minister to give a statement. For the media, we'll turn on that side. We'll start with Honorable Ablai Sise, the National Assembly Deputy Majority Leader, for his brief statement. And then we'll move to Honorable Suleiman Dame as well as Mr. Sam Bako.
Thank you so much. Good morning to all of you. And also, first of all, I recognize the presence of Dr. the Minister of Justice, and Professor Dubifar, Professor Sadiq, and of course, members of the National Assembly. And we also recognize the presence of the Vice Chair of the Independent Electoral Commission. All the protocol duly and respectfully observed. I am representing the Speaker of the National Assembly, and of course, the Majority Leader who should have been here and make a statement. As Deputy Majority Leader, I will be giving a statement, and it's going to be very, very short. It's like you said, it's a dialogue session between National Assembly members and the diaspora, of course, the partners and all other stakeholders on the elections bill and focusing more on diaspora voting. I have the two co-chairs who are with us here. In the 5th legislature, I was part of the National Assembly that have looked into the election countrywide to also talk to other like Gambians so that they can have their input in the elections bill. And most part of the diaspora voting has been outlined by the citizens. The bill is yet to be before the National Assembly for consideration. But as far as I'm concerned, of course, my colleagues, National Assembly members, our role in this is to ensure that we support the process. And the diaspora is a critical part of our country, and of course, being part of our electoral process is also going to support Gambia a lot. So, as members of Parliament, we only have to make our minds to ensure that the provisions in the elections bill to give the diaspora the voting right is achieved. That is the reason why we are here. And of course, we may have questions in the elections bill that requires response, and a critical response for that matter. Not only for people from the diaspora, of course, the Independent Electoral Commission and the government of the Gambia to ask members of Parliament will have questions to ask, and then response will come to that so that we can build consensus on the critical provisions in the elections bill to give diaspora the right they deserve. And of course, this will be done here. I am speaking on behalf of the consultation. The co-chairs are here. I'm sure they will be able to say more than I just said. So in that regard, I thank all of you for coming. And of course, wanted National Assembly members to concentrate more and then ask questions as much as possible. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Honorable Cisse, for that. And I would like to invite Honorable Mali Cisse, the National Assembly Deputy Minority Leader and co-chair of the Election Bill Joint Committee, also the chair of the Standing Committee on Human Rights and Constitutional Affairs.
Thank you very much. Honorable colleagues, Honorable Minister of Justice, Professor Val, Abani, and the IEC Committee, and all the protocols duly observed. I am really very pleased that the topic before us this morning is really of great importance. It is not new to members of the National Assembly, as this bill has been before us for quite a long time, especially for those of us who are in the two committees, that is the Human Rights and Constitutional Matters Committee and that of the Local Government Committee. I am pleased to say that to provide opportunities for our right voters to vote is really something that is their constitutional right and it is not overdue. Therefore, we as National Assembly are ready and willing to do the needful, to do what we are supposed to do, and we really want to go down in history to say that we made it. And certainly we do so. These two committees, the local government and the Human Rights Committee, have really done an extensive consultation across the country and even beyond. And we made our reports to the plenary. And the plenary accepted our reports. And as we speak now, the bill is at consideration stage. So I can assure you that we will do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Cisse, for your commitment and the work that you continue to do on this as well. We'd also like to invite Honorable Suleiman Jamek, National Assembly member, as well as the co-chair of the Election Bill Joint Committee, who is also the chair of the Select Committee of Regional Government and Lands.
Thank you very much, Professor Honorable Minister, Mr. Jallow, Professor Vice Chair, IEC, Interparty Representative, Mr. Samuel, Chief Electoral Officer, Mr. Jai, honorable members of Parliament, media houses, potential stakeholders who are present, all protocol during the program. Actually, this is a very important session. We give MSDG and Minister of Justice for bringing us here as parliamentarians to have this important retreat. And the purpose of this retreat is about giving opportunities or rights for the diaspora for them to be able to vote. As we all know, it's all about representation, and for me, my philosophy is if you want to develop as a country, you must have proper representation. That is not only in the parliament, but even in the workplace where we normally appoint people to do the work. If you have the right person there, they will definitely represent and understand the well-being and the welfare of people. So basically, this is very important, and we all know the National Assembly is the main body that normally makes laws, But equally, diaspora, they are part of us, they are Gambians. So thank God IC is here and other stakeholders are here. So we will brainstorm and discuss as a family to ensure that at least what is possible we do that. Because at the end of the day, we are all Gambians who are here and we are talking about the issue of Gambia. So for that being the case, I will use the opportunity to thank my co-chair because they were the one who were in the 5th legislature and they did a very wonderful work and we must give them that credit. You know, that's the and for us in the new National Assembly, definitely they also put us through to the level that we are able to understand. Now consultations were made during that time. So still now there is another consultation happening. So let's just discuss as a family and do the right thing for the Gambian people. So on that note, I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Jame, and as I said, for the work that the Election Bill Joint Committee continues to do in this regard as well. We also do have the co-chairs of the Inter-Party Committee. Honorable Sekuba is unable to be here, but ably represented as well. However, we do have Mr. Samba Balde, who will speak on behalf of the Inter-Party Committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Attorney General and Minister of Justice, Honorable Dawda Jallow, the Program Director, Professor Ibrahim Far, Deputy Chairman of the Independent Electoral Commission, Professor Satan Nava, Chairman of this August gathering, the National Assembly members, ladies and gentlemen, the media. My name is Samba Balde, one of the co-chairs of the Inter-Party Committee of the Gambia. The Inter-Party Committee is a forum where all political parties registered with the Independent Electoral Commission of the Gambia are part. It is a forum that is created to promote dialogue, to resolve contentious issues between political parties, and it is also a platform that encourages consensus building in decision-making processes among political actors in the country to build and sustain peaceful coexistence and social cohesion. The topic of discussion today is of significant concern to the Inter-Party Committee because the Inter-Party Committee believes emphasizing Gambians living outside the national boundaries is critical in ensuring that a full electoral cycle would be achieved in participatory democracy. When Gambians can vote wherever they live, democracy and inclusive politics, IPC supports all efforts that would enable political parties to count on the votes of their respective supporters wherever they may be. We are aware that diaspora voting has never been practiced in the Gambia due to the nature of our tokenized voting system. It will be challenging to the Independent Electoral Commission to transport voting drums and tokens to all the countries where Gambians are. That is a huge challenge in terms of requesting logistics and human resources. However, as technology advances, we think that paper balloting and or digital voting is an opportunity available to explore. We do know that information technology is capable of creating software where that can link the IEC to the world. In as much as this is so costly, we are convinced that the end might justify the means, as it would enable Gambians to exercise their rights to vote as enshrined in the Constitution of the Gambia. Diaspora Gambians would not only commit but particularly contribute in choosing who they think can best serve their interests by financial contributions of the diaspora in our economy, and therefore it can only be better when they are given the opportunity to partake in the democratic process for socio-economic development of the Gambia. There are developing countries in the sub-region and the constitutional service that enable their citizens to vote in their national elections here in the Gambia for many years now. The Republic of Senegal and Guinea-Conakry to vote in their national elections. Owing to this, I think the Independent Electoral Commission should be supported by the government to undertake a study tour to these countries in order to learn the model and the technology and the technical know-how they use to realize this huge, important democratic process. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, fellow participants, please allow me to conclude by echoing that there is a big democratic division over national standards to gain when it gives an opportunity to all Gambians, irrespective of geographical locations, to vote in our elections. That will make them to feel the sense of belonging to our nation in one hand, and in the other, increase participation. The Interparty Committee is convinced that through dialogue and consensus building, the objective, although a bit challenging, can be achieved. Put all our hands on them as Gambians to work in unison to bring all the eligible Gambian voters here and outside on board, irrespective of partisan affiliation. Long live the Gambia. Together we can achieve what our fellow African countries have achieved by bringing all nationals to the ballot box for inclusive participation in the building of democracy for sustainable growth. Honorable members, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and I thank you for lending me your ears. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Valde, and for the work that the Interparty Committee continues to do, and please do extend our appreciation as well to who's not able to be here. Again, thank you very much to the National Assembly members for this brief stakeholder statement. As we said, we do have members of the IEC as well here, especially when we go into the dialogue session, we'll have opportunity to engage both with the Deputy Chair, but also with the Chief Electoral Officer, who's also here as well. At this moment, just to give an opportunity to the media if they want to move and pivot this way for the keynote statement. Okay, we're all set. Again, to express our appreciation to the Honorable Minister of Justice, who is here but whose office has also been doing the work in the background as well, especially around some of these very important issues. It's always good to see my learned senior from the University of the Gambia, Faculty of Law, to here. The journey has been long. Good to see you again. But please do join me in welcoming Honorable Dawda, Jallow, the Attorney General and the Minister of Justice, to give his keynote.
Thank you very much, Prof. I'm flanked by two profs. And I recognize Professor Jibril Fall as well as Professor Satan Nabani. Madam Nabani and myself are products of the University of the Gambia, so we are proud to be here today. And I'm sure there are many other products of the University of the Gambia in this hall here. I recognize the Vice Chairman of the Independent Electoral Commission, representing the Chairperson, Honorable National Assembly members, members of the Gambian diaspora and the experts. Retreat, other distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the press. Good morning to you all. When you tend to join them by, I feel like ignoring my script and go back to academia and just talk off the script. Because it's a practical session. It's not a session for us to be making the usual ministerial statements. Like Professor Fall have said, we've gone beyond that. The issues to look at this kind of meeting, especially at this hour, is what are the challenges, and what can we do go around those challenges to make sure these rights that have been recognized in the Constitution are actually practicalized. There are real challenges which we cannot ignore, and we've been working, particularly the project, have been working tirelessly all these years to make sure that these rights are realized fully. When I took over office in July 2020, the spirit was so high that we believed the diaspora would have participated in the last cycle of elections. Unfortunately, it couldn't happen. And I think the commitment is this next time. How do we go about that is the responsibility of all of us. There are constitutional challenges. There are legislative challenges, but the legislative challenges, as you will hear soon, some of them are being tackled in the bill before you, that is the elections bill. Of course, the constitutional challenges remain. There is an attempt to remedy them under the current constitution through a constitutional amendment. Or alternatively, if the draft constitution that stalled for a moment is able to come to life in time, we hope that's also a second opportunity to deal with this issue holistically in the Constitution. But we can only talk about the Constitution that we are using at the moment. If you look at Section 39 of that Constitution, that's where our franchise is guaranteed. It's clear. It says all Gambians who are 18 years or older and of sound mind have the right to vote for the purpose of presidential and National Assembly election. But it also went further to say they shall be entitled to be registered as a voter in the National Assembly constituency for that purpose. This posed a challenge. This was a challenge for the diaspora, because the clause on one hand outlines the voting rights of all citizens of the Gambia, 18 years or older, and mentally sound, without distinction between those living in the country and beyond the country. However, in the same clause, it makes the enjoyment of that right contingent on first being a registered voter, and that registration can only happen in a National Assembly constituency. This is the reason why you hear the project saying there need to be a demarcation in the diaspora. Unless the diaspora is demarcated into constituencies under the current constitutional warnings, it will be very difficult for this right to be realized, because the registration is contingent on it happening. So you see the importance of demarcation. So it's like the right is given, but the condition precedent to the enjoyment of the right is remain a challenge. We tried to tackle this in the bill that is before you by expanding the definition of elections or electoral division by saying such constituency that may be created for the Gambian diaspora in foreign countries. So the bill contemplates now constituencies to be beyond the Gambian territorial jurisdiction, meaning constituencies can now be created beyond the source of the Gambia for this purpose. That's one way we attempted to resolve this demarcation or constituency challenges in the Constitution. Then the clause 14 of the bill that is also before you went further to try to help diaspora Gambians to realize their right to register and vote in all elections. And it went beyond by mandating the commission, and when I say commission, we mean the National Electoral Commission, to work with the inter-party committee for the registration and voting processes of overseas Gambians. The regulations, according to the bill that is before you, is to outline the criteria. The criteria for choosing which country as opposed to the other, but also the criteria for appointment of election officials for that purpose, and also the procedure of the statement. Some people are even trying to argue that because of the procedure of our voting, elections cannot be organized in the diaspora. Now the bill is saying this can be regulated, and like you have the prof said, if you draw the rules as assembly members, IEC is only there to implement. It's for you to decide what and how, and once that decision is made in a legislative framework, it will be implemented. How we go about it, now that is the challenge. I don't think that's more of a problem of members. The members, you are to decide something should happen. Of course, not to change men into women or women into men, but other than that, when you say something should happen, of course something reasonable as this, it's the responsibility of us, the implementers, to find a way of ensuring that those things are implemented. So, procedure of voting could either be with the marble or by continuously, if we so badly want to maintain our traditional and unique marble. We can spell out, for the sake of the diaspora, which are going to be a handful of countries for now. Of course, once we start, we expect it will expand. But we can have a different system for the diaspora for logistic reasons, and that should be possible. There is no law that should say it should be uniform. The way we do it here should be the same way we do it outside. So that should not be a challenge. But like I'm saying, there is a clause 14 in the bill before you, that asks you to legislate and mandate somebody to operationalize that. That detail. Are we all together?
Yes.
They wanted to ask questions, but I guess we don't.
Your standing orders are not applicable here. So you are not entitled to interrupt me until I finish. There is no speaker here. And there are no constituency tax that you can raise. So I don't see you. So please, let's proceed. Now, I would also want to address the implications of key two provisions, which Prof also mentioned in passing, in the Constitution. That is Section 91, which prohibits Gambians with citizenships or nationalities of other countries from being qualified to contest for National Assembly seats. in the Constitution. And the second one is Section 71(2), which have similar effect, but that one is for cabinet. It also disqualifies any Gambian holding any other nationality other than that of the Gambia, because they directly only affect the diaspora. Not many of us who are mainly resident in the Gambia acquire other nationality. Usually, Gambians who acquire other nationalities are the Gambians who travel and are resident in other countries. Now, the first one, Section 91, dealing with disqualifications for National Assembly membership. That one is not entrenched, and that is the most important one for us at the moment. That can't be amended through the National Assembly alone. But Section 71(2) is entrenched, that is to enter cabinet. And that one can only be amended through a referendum. The challenge, excuse me, I am a teacher. When the noise is in my class, I cannot hear. So that's the way I was trained in the teaching college. So please, can I have your attention, please? So what I was trying to say is, the right to participate in election are two-pronged. The right to vote and the right to contest to be voted for. These are the two that go side by side. If we don't deal with, but that has to do with number of constituencies. But Section 90 is critical because Section 90 is where you can be qualified to contest. So even if the diaspora is demarcated into constituencies, if we don't amend Section 90 of the constituency, of the Constitution, they will only have one of these two rights that I mentioned, the right to vote. And then that will defeat the whole purpose of effective participation through representation, because they need to be represented and participate. So those two provisions there are also there. And I'm sorry, the constitutional amendment, I was looking for my bill, Prof. Oh, okay. It's a shame I couldn't find it, but let me have the draft bill and we work on it and see what we do. So it requires both the legislation before you, but for the realization of the full rights that we are talking about here, it will require an additional step. No, I don't need it now, but I can get a copy later. It will require a constitutional amendment for them not only to be able to vote, but then they should be able to also contest for National Assembly seats in those constituencies to be demarcated, if they are demarcated, because they have to be demarcated, of course, for the purpose of both presidential and National Assembly, but they should be demarcated with the view that people in the diaspora should also be able to contest for seats in those constituencies and sit in the National Assembly. These are among some of the challenges. Of course, some talked about the others, cost, logistics, and other things. But I think the most important ones that, especially us, maybe you, National Assembly, where we need you most is the legislative part. If the legislative hurdles are clear, I think the operational challenges can be done. Trying to even spend energy and time trying to address the operational challenges where you don't have a clearance in terms of legislative framework, whether you can even enjoy or realize these rights. So I would, like I said, I would shelve my written statement for another day, because all that we could say in such statements is the recognition of the role of the diaspora, which we don't, like Prof said, we don't need to re-import those ones. They have another event where even they showcase their remittances and other contributions, investments into the economy and other things. I will spare you the boredom of that. And these are the practical issues we should deal with. So look at the elections bill. In fact, I would have to make this clear. I will stay a little bit longer so that I hear few more concerns as the ministry in charge of the bill, but also as the ministry that will have to work on the amendment of the Constitution. I would want to hear as many practical issues as possible so that we see how we can work together to the realization of this. On this note, I'm not too sure whether it's good enough as a keynote statement, but like Professor Moderator said, we are sitting on the same level. So the bureaucracy will have to be cut. And I thank you for taking your time to be here to participate in this retreat. And like Prof said, we count on your collaboration and your cooperation so that this legislation is one of the longest legislations in the chamber. I found this elections bill already have been tabled. And I am going to be 4 years in July. So the bill is about 4 years plus in the National Assembly. So let's see what we can do to bring it out, and let's see what we can do to help our brothers and sisters in the diaspora to start enjoying the right to participate in the democratic space. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Honorable Minister, for your keynote, and I think off the cuff was excellent. So thank you as well for doing that, but for also raising, as you said, the critical questions, especially as it relates to direct engagement with the National Assembly members. This sort of brings us to the formalities, the end of the formalities per se. I do want to give one opportunity to the media, so we'll one opportunity to a representative from the media if they have a question. In relation to the procedures for National Assembly members, we will wait until after the break for the closed session if you have direct questions or concerns to raise as well. And as we said, we have the diaspora experts, we have the ministry here, we have the IEC as well as others to directly engage as well. I'm a very strict chairperson as well. I don't have a gavel, but we'll go accordingly when we're in our own private session as well in relation to today's retreat. If we have one person from the media who would like to ask a question, now is the opportunity before we close this part of the program.
Yes.
If you can share your name as well as the...
From the Minister's points, what he said, that the actualization of the whole process where they can just not vote but be voted for would require an amendment. And I think that would, in doing the amendment, the executive would have a little role in doing that. So what exactly would that process have, knowing that that is a separate entity from the elections space? And then Professor Fal also made a point where he said, if I had in mind that the development or the commitment of the IEC was consistent, I want to understand, if you set it up to be consistent, how would that see this actualization when the body that is supposed to actualize this thing is not that committed?
Well,
yeah.
For my part, the question of when, I think as soon as possible. I think there's a bill that is drafted already. That bill will have to go through the natural journey of legislative process. It has to be taken to cabinet, gazetted, and then tabled before the National Assembly. So we will review the bill. If it is adequate enough, then it will start its journey of legislative process as soon as possible. However, what I just want to add on to that is the draft constitution also process has begun. Next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Cabinet is sitting on the draft constitution. The bill next week, 3 days have been put aside for the draft constitution. Immediately after that, it will be gazetted. But of course, before it reaches you, there is a 100 days gazetting period. So after that, we're hoping to gazette the draft constitution once again. And then we will be introducing the draft constitution, hopefully not your this session coming, but your next session. The draft constitution will be before you for consideration. Hopefully, if it goes through, we believe we might not need, but because they've, like you had the Prof said, they've waited for too long, we don't want to rely on only one approach. So both the constitutional amendment approach of the current constitution and also the draft constitution process will all still be in progress. Whichever one comes sooner and takes care of the problem adequately will suffice, and we wouldn't need the order. Thank you.
We've been engaged with the IEC on actualizing diaspora voting and representation since the middle part of 2018, I think. The fact that we haven't voted is self-evident of the failure of the process to conclude. The fact that we have not voted is self-evident that there was no success in the process, but the commitment is true and consistent. The IEC published in 2020 their calendar of when they would register voters across the country, all the regions. And a date was slotted for the first to in May of 2021, I think it was the 1st of May, or around that time, the Chief Electoral Officer was asked by media members whether really the diaspora would vote. And he reaffirmed that they would vote. By the end of the month of May, that's when the IEC, 2021, that's when the IEC announced that it's no longer practically possible. The minister have partly explained what that practical difficulty was. That is this bit that the diaspora has, like any other citizen, need to be registered in a constituency. For some of us, we were saying that that's not a problem because everyone in the diaspora comes from a constituency in the Gambia, and so we can be registered in that. I'm from Lajokula, Yeringanya, Serekula, my National Assembly member is sitting here. So I would have been registered in that constituency. Anyway, that did not fly or was not bought, and it didn't happen. So that's why in the solution, as the minister referred to, the demarcation of the constituency happens. The failure overall for us to vote, ultimately, like the success, it's the IEC, it's the election authority. But I remind you that it is also the boundary authority. So it is its job to create this constituency. So for us, our belief in that they would deliver is as strong as it has been. The fact that belief is strengthened by the fact that we failed. It's unthinkable. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Prof. And again, we express our appreciation for the media for being here. I know somebody's raising their hand, but we should be wrapping up. We already have the mic, so if you can take 1 minute for your question, and then we wrap up this session. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much. My name is a reporter of Jallow. Yeah, I have a question for the minister. The court has ruled that the diaspora have the right to vote. However, looking at the last electoral cycle, they are not given a vote. Can you make a promise on behalf of the government that the diaspora will vote in this next electoral cycle? Can you assure us, because they have the right to vote, and the court have ruled that they have the right to vote. So it is the opportunity for you right now, as we are here, to tell us if the government are willing to do that or not.
Before the court ruled, it's a constitutional right which I have mentioned in my statement. The court only reaffirms a right that exists. The court did not even confer the case. So it's a reaffirmation. I can assure you government's commitment to this process. I don't make promises, but I can assure you government's commitment to this process, to realization of the diaspora voting right as soon as it is practically possible.
Thank you to the Honorable Minister. And the end of this first part of the retreat. I would like to welcome all of you for us to go outside.